I didn't confront Daniel. I know you want me to say I called him and demanded answers. I didn't, because confrontation with Daniel was a game I'd stopped playing in childhood. He was better at it. He was louder, faster, more comfortable with conflict because conflict was just another form of attention and attention was his native habitat. If I confronted him, he'd deny it. He'd reframe it. He'd make me the unreasonable one. He'd say I was being dramatic and Mom would agree because Mom always agreed with the louder child. So instead I did what I've always done. I went quiet. I went to work. And I let time do what time always does to lies, which is apply pressure until the foundation cracks. The crack came at a dinner party. Elise's colleague, a woman named Priya, was celebrating a promotion. 12 people around a long table at an Italian restaurant. I wasn't there. I was at home. But Elise was there. And so was the conversation that changed everything. According to Elise, and she told me this herself 8 days later sitting at my kitchen island with mascara tracks on her face, someone at the table mentioned logistics software. Elise said casually, my sister-in-law works in tech, something with computers. Priya asked what company. Elise said I actually don't know the name. I think it's small. Priya, being the kind of person who Googles everything, pulled out her phone. What's her last name? Elise told her. Priya typed. And then Priya made a sound. A small, involuntary, incredulous sound. The kind of sound you make when you pull back a curtain expecting a closet and find a cathedral. She turned her phone toward Elise. On the screen was a Forbes profile piece from 18 months earlier. Title: How Elaine Whitfield Built a $40 million logistics platform without anyone noticing. The photo showed me at my desk. Normal, unremarkable, no Ferrari, no champagne. Just me into monitors and a cup of coffee that had probably gone cold because it always goes cold. Elise stared at the screen. Then she read the article. Then she Googled my company. Then she found the revenue data. Then she found the employee count. Then she found the award from the industry conference. Then she found the interview where I was asked about my background and I said I came from a family that invested everything in my brother's future and nothing in mine. And it turned out to be the greatest gift they ever gave me because it taught me that the only approval that compounds is your own. Elise left the dinner party before dessert arrived. She drove home. She did not speak to Daniel that night. The next morning, she asked him one question. Who is Elaine? And Daniel, in perhaps the most telling response possible, said, what do you mean? As if the question were confusing. As if there were multiple Elaines to choose from. As if the answer weren't a full human being he'd been deliberately minimizing for 3 decades. Elise showed him the Forbes article. She showed him the company website. She showed him everything Priya had found in a 10-second search that he'd spent 3 years making sure she'd never perform. And then she asked the question that mattered. Why did you lie to me about your sister? I don't know exactly what Daniel said. Elise told me pieces but not the whole conversation. What I know is this. He tried denial first. That article is exaggerated. It's a startup thing. They inflate numbers. When Elise pointed out that the revenue figures were sourced from public filings, he shifted to minimization. I didn't lie. I just didn't want to make a big deal out of it. She's private about her work. When Elise reminded him of the specific things he'd told her, the debt, the struggling startup, the requests for money from their parents, he went quiet. And then he said something that Elise repeated to me with the particular precision of someone who wants to make sure every syllable is witnessed. He said, I didn't want you to compare us. 6 words. Not an apology, a confession. He didn't want his wife to compare them, because comparison would reveal the math. The brother who received everything and built a career. The sister who received nothing and built an empire. The brother who was given $30,000 a year in tuition and still needed his parents' approval at every turn. The sister who was given the word resourceful and turned it into a company that employed more people than Daniel had ever managed. He wasn't protecting me. He was protecting himself from the one thing he couldn't perform, charm, or narrate his way around. The numbers. And the numbers were mine. 8 days after the dinner party, Elise came to my house. She'd gotten my address from a cousin. When I opened the door, her eyes went wide. She looked at the house, then at me, then at the house again. You live here? I invited her in, made tea. She sat at my kitchen island and told me everything. Every lie Daniel had constructed. Every version of me he'd sold her. The pity dinners, the donated clothes, the Christmas envelope. With each revelation, her eyes filled, not with sadness but with the particular anguish of someone recalibrating 3 years of memories and finding fraud in each one. She kept saying, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry," and I kept telling her the same thing. "Elise, you believed your husband. That's not a flaw. That's what trust is supposed to look like. You didn't do anything wrong." "But he did," she said. Her voice cracked. "He lied to me about you. He lied about who you are." "Why would he do that?" "Because if you knew who I was, you might wonder why he's not more." I didn't say it to be cruel. I said it because it was true. And Elise deserved at least one person in her life who gave her the truth without wrapping it in something more comfortable. She stayed for 2 hours. I showed her the office, the monitors, the dashboard with real-time data. I told her about the library book and the work-study job and the $61,000 in loans and Joan Nakamura and the first year of revenue when I lived on savings and fear and the stubborn belief that being underestimated was a competitive advantage. She listened the way nobody in my family ever had. Completely, without waiting for her turn to talk, without redirecting the conversation to someone else. She just listened, and when she left, she hugged me in the doorway and said something I didn't expect. "Thank you for not hating me." I squeezed her back. "You were kind to me when you thought I had nothing. That tells me who you are. What he told you tells me who he is. Those are two different things." She nodded, wiped her eyes, got in her car and drove home to a marriage she was suddenly seeing for the first time without the filter her husband had installed. My parents found out about the lie 2 weeks later. Not from me, from Elise, who had apparently decided that the era of comfortable fiction was over and was working through the family the way a software update works through a system, replacing outdated code with something functional. Mom called me on a Saturday. Her voice had a quality I'd never heard before. Uncertain, tentative. The voice of a woman stepping onto a surface she wasn't sure would hold her weight. "Elaine, did you know Daniel was telling Elise those things about you?" "Some of them, not all." "Why didn't you say something?" I paused. Let the question hang in the space between us. "Because you wouldn't have believed me, Mom. And even if you had, you would have found a way to make it my fault. You would have said I was being sensitive, or jealous, or that I was making things harder for Daniel when he was already under pressure. And then you would have asked me to be the bigger person, which is what you've always called it when you ask me to be smaller." She didn't respond. I could hear her breathing. The same kitchen sounds in the background. The refrigerator that hums too loud. The clock above the stove that's been 2 minutes fast for as long as I can remember. "Mom, I built something real, something big. I did it without your money, without Dad's attention, without anyone in this family knowing or asking or caring. And I'm not angry about that anymore. But I need you to understand that every time you told me to be resourceful, every time you focused on Daniel instead, every time you treated my independence as permission to ignore me, I was taking notes. Not on paper. In the architecture of my life, every absence became a load-bearing wall. I built my company on the foundation of everything you didn't give me. That's not a thank you. It's just the truth. Silence. Then, small and cracked and raw, "I didn't know, Elaine. About the company. About any of it. I didn't know." "I know you didn't, Mom. That's the whole point. Daniel and I haven't spoken since that phone call, the one where he told me Elise knows and I told him to sort it out himself. I've heard through family channels that Elise has not left him but that something between them shifted in a way that doesn't shift back. Trust, once fractured at the identity level, doesn't heal with apologies. It regrows slowly, cell by cell, and only if the person who broke it stops performing and starts being honest. I don't know if Daniel is capable of that. I hope he is. Not for his sake, but for Elise's. She deserves the truth, unedited, from a man brave enough to deliver it. Dad called me last month. We don't talk often. We never have. Our relationship has always been a hallway, long and narrow and functional, connecting rooms he visits with other people. But he called, and he said something that landed differently than anything he'd said in 36 years. "I looked you up, Elaine. Your company, what you've built. I read the Forbes piece. I read all of it. And I need you to know that I am proud of you. Not because of the money, because you did it the way you've always done everything. Without making any noise, without needing anyone to watch. I didn't realize until now that I should have been watching all along. I stood in my kitchen, the one with good light and a stove that works properly and soup on the counter because I can afford to make soup for the pleasure of it. And I let those words settle. I didn't cry. I was past the crying, but something unlocked. Some door I'd closed so long ago I'd forgotten it was a door. It just looked like a wall. Thank you, Dad. That means more than you know. He cleared his throat. The way men of his generation handle emotion, mechanical, effortful. You'll come for Thanksgiving? I'll think about it. And for once, I'll think about it didn't mean no, it meant exactly what it said. I am not telling this story to humiliate my brother. I'm telling it because somewhere right now, someone is being described inaccurately by the people who are supposed to know them best. Someone is sitting at a family dinner being introduced as the quiet one, the simple one, the one who didn't quite figure it out, while inside them is a cathedral no one has ever bothered to enter. Daniel isn't a villain. He's a man who was handed a narrative at 12 years old. Daniel is the successful one and spent the next 24 years defending it against any evidence that threatened to rewrite it, including his own sister, including reality. Mom isn't cruel. She's a woman who made a bet on one child and stopped looking at the other, not out of malice, but out of a limited imagination for what her quiet daughter might become. She's learning now, late, but learning. Elise isn't naive. She's a woman who trusted her husband and is now navigating the rubble of that trust with more grace than most people could manage. I respect her enormously. And me, I'm the woman who was called resourceful at 17 and spent the next 19 years proving that resourceful is just another word for unstoppable when you remove the ceiling other people placed above you. I don't need my family to validate what I've built. The revenue validates it. The team validates it. The clients validate it. But I won't pretend it doesn't matter that for 3 decades, the people who were supposed to know me best didn't know me at all. That matters. It just doesn't get to define me anymore. So I leave you with this. If someone in your life is telling a smaller story about you than the one you're actually living, you have two choices: correct them or outgrow them. I chose the second one. It took longer, but it lasted forever. Tell me which one you'd choose. I read every comment. And if this stayed with you, if any sentence in this story felt like it was written about your life, subscribe. There's a story linked below about someone whose family found out the hard way that silence is not the same as weakness. I think you need to hear it. I'll see you there. She found out at a dinner party. Not from me, not from my brother, from Google. One search, 10 seconds. And the woman my brother had spent 3 years telling I was the embarrassing side of the family, the charity case, the one they don't really talk about, was suddenly staring at her phone screen with an expression I've only ever seen once in my life. The expression of someone discovering that every story they've been told is architecturally, systematically, provably wrong. I wasn't there when it happened. I didn't need to be, because what followed, the phone calls, the accusations, the unraveling of a lie my brother had been maintaining like a second mortgage, all of it reached me within 48 hours. And when it did, I was standing in the kitchen of a house I'd paid for in cash, stirring a pot of soup I didn't need to eat but chose to make because for the first time in 15 years, my evenings belonged to me and I could spend them on something as ordinary and miraculous as soup. My phone rang. My brother's name. I turned the burner down, wiped my hands on a towel, and answered with the calm that comes from having already survived the worst thing a family can do to you, which is not cruelty. It's erasure. His voice was a texture I recognized immediately. Tight, controlled. The voice of a man constructing a sentence while dismantling a panic attack. Elise knows. 2 words. No greeting. No preamble. Just the detonation, followed by the dust cloud of everything he hadn't said for 3 years settling around us like weather. I leaned against the counter. The soup bubbled softly behind me. Knows what, Daniel? Everything. She Googled you. She saw the company. She saw the Forbes feature. She saw all of it. He paused. She's not speaking to me. I picked up my wooden spoon and stirred the soup once, slowly. Then I said the thing I'd earned the right to say after 36 years of being his sister and approximately 30 of those years being his secret. That sounds like a conversation between you and your wife, Daniel, not between you and me. And I hung up, not because I was angry, because the soup was almost done and I'd already given that man enough of my evenings. Before I go further, if this story is already pulling at something inside you, if you've ever been the family member someone was ashamed of for reasons they invented, take 2 seconds and subscribe. Drop your city and the time where you are in the comments. I want to know who's out there. My name is Elaine. I'm 36. And this is the story of how my older brother convinced his wife, his friends, and half our extended family that I was the struggling, directionless, financially dependent relative they should feel sorry for, while I was quietly running a company that generated $40 million last year and employed 214 people. This is also the story of what happened when his wife typed my name into a search bar and the entire fiction collapsed in the time it takes to load a web page. But to understand the Google search, you need to understand the kitchen. A different kitchen. 1996. Yellow wallpaper with a fruit pattern. A refrigerator that hummed louder than the television. I was 8. Daniel was 12. We were sitting at the table doing homework, except Daniel wasn't doing homework. He was drawing logos for a fake company he'd invented called Turbo Enterprises. He had a notebook full of them. Dad walked by, looked over Daniel's shoulder and laughed. This kid's gonna run the world someday. He ruffled Daniel's hair and kept walking. I was sitting right there. I had a math test the next day. I'd been studying for an hour. Dad didn't look at my paper. He didn't look at me at all. And the thing about being 8 is that you don't have the language for what that moment does to you. You just feel it. A small rearrangement inside your chest. A categorization that happens below conscious thought. He is the one they see. You are the one who sits next to the one they see. That distinction, planted at 8, grew roots I wouldn't discover for another 2 decades. Daniel was the golden child in the most literal sense. He was bright, loud, charming, the kind of kid teachers remembered and coaches recruited and aunts pinched at holidays while saying this one's going places. He talked about money constantly, not having it, but making it. By 14, he was reading business magazines he didn't understand and quoting entrepreneurs he couldn't spell. Dad loved it. Mom framed it. The whole family narrative organized itself around Daniel's trajectory. Daniel, the future CEO. Daniel, the visionary. Daniel, the one who would lift us all up someday. I was the footnote. Elaine is fine. Elaine is quiet. Elaine reads a lot. These were the descriptors, not negative. Worse, negligible. You can recover from being criticized. Being overlooked is a longer surgery because first you have to convince yourself the wound exists. I was good at school. Not good the way Daniel was good, which was loud and inconsistent and celebrated regardless of results. I was good the way a machine is good. Reliable, consistent, invisible until it breaks, and I never broke. Straight A's every semester from 5th grade through high school. National merit semifinalist. Accepted to 3 universities with partial scholarships. And when I sat my parents down to discuss college, at the same table where Dad had admired Daniel's fake logos for years earlier, Mom said something that I have replayed so many times it has its own groove in my memory. We're going to focus on Daniel's school first, Elaine. He got into the business program and it's expensive. You're resourceful. You'll find a way. Resourceful. That was my word. Daniel got visionary. I got resourceful. He got investment. I got independence, which is what people call neglect when the neglected person succeeds anyway. Daniel's business program cost my parents $34,000 a year. They took out a parent loan. They adjusted their budget. They drove older cars and postponed a kitchen renovation. For Daniel, for the future CEO, for the trajectory. My education cost them nothing. I covered it with scholarships, federal loans, a work-study job in the university's IT department, and a weekend gig tutoring high school students in math at $25 an hour. I graduated with $61,000 in debt and a degree in information systems. Daniel graduated with 0 debt and a degree in business administration and a confidence so thoroughly funded by other people's sacrifice that he mistook it for talent. Here is what happened next, and here is where the roads diverged so completely that you'd never guess they started in the same driveway. Daniel got a job at a marketing firm. Good salary. Nice office. He posted about it constantly. LinkedIn updates with words like blessed and disrupting and humbled, the vocabulary of someone performing success for an audience rather than building it in private. He rose to middle management within 4 years, which is respectable. I want to be clear about that. It's a perfectly respectable career. But Daniel didn't treat it as respectable. He treated it as historic. He talked about his position the way other people talk about summiting Everest. Every dinner conversation became a TED Talk. Every family gathering became a shareholder meeting, where he was the only stock worth discussing. I got a job at a small software company. 47 employees. Modest salary. No corner office. The work was unglamorous and deeply technical. building back-end systems for logistics companies, the kind of infrastructure nobody sees until it fails. I loved it the way I love most things, quietly, completely, without needing anyone to watch. Within 3 years, I'd been promoted twice, not because I was political but because I solved problems other people had been walking around for months. My boss, a woman named Joan Nakamura who had built her career on the same invisible competence that defined mine, called me into her office one afternoon and said, "You think like a founder. Have you ever considered starting something?" I hadn't. Not because I lacked ambition, but because ambition in my family was Daniel's territory, and I'd internalized the boundary so deeply that the idea of building something of my own felt like trespassing. Joan saw that hesitation. She said something I carry with me. "Elaine, the people who told you to stay small did it because your full size threatens theirs. You don't owe anyone your smallness." I started my company 11 months later, a logistics optimization platform, unsexy, unflashy, the kind of business that doesn't get breathless tech press because it doesn't have a charismatic founder doing keynote speeches in designer sneakers. It just works. It saves companies money. It solves problems that cost real businesses real revenue every single day. The kind of business a resourceful person builds. Year 1, we did $600,000 in revenue. I didn't tell my family. Year 2, $2.3 million. I didn't tell my family. Year 3, $8.7 million. I still didn't tell my family. Not because I was hiding it, because nobody asked. In every family phone call, every holiday dinner, every group text, the conversation orbited Daniel. Daniel's promotion, Daniel's new apartment, Daniel's car, Daniel's golf game. The family economy of attention was a closed system, and every unit of currency was denominated in Daniel. I existed in those conversations the way elevator music exists in a building. Present, ignorable, designed to fill silence rather than command it. If you've ever sat at a table surrounded by family and felt like a ghost in your own body, like someone who is technically present but functionally absent. If you've ever smiled and nodded while the conversation flowed around you like water around a stone, I need you to tell me about it in the comments. Not because misery loves company, because recognition is the first form of rescue, and I think some of you need to be recognized right now. Then Daniel met Elise. She was 28, a dental hygienist with kind eyes and a laugh that sounded like she meant it. I liked her immediately, the first time we met at a family barbecue. She asked me what I did. I said I work in tech. She said, "That's cool. What kind?" And before I could answer, Daniel's hand landed on my shoulder and he said, "Elaine does computer stuff, very touchy, very behind the scenes." Then he steered the conversation to his latest campaign at work, and Elise's attention followed him like a spotlight tracking the only actor on stage. I let it go. I always let it go. That was the pattern. Daniel narrates. Elaine disappears. The family applauds. But something shifted after Daniel and Elise got engaged. The lies started. Not to me. About me. I pieced this together later from conversations with Elise after everything unraveled. But here is what Daniel told his wife about her future sister-in-law over the course of 3 years. He told her I worked at a struggling startup that was probably going to fold. He told her I had significant credit card debt and lived in a small apartment I could barely afford. He told her I had asked their parents for money on multiple occasions, which is a lie so perfectly inverted it made me dizzy when I heard it. He told her I was sensitive about my financial situation and that bringing it up would embarrass me. He told her that when I seemed quiet at family events, it was because I was depressed about my career and they should all be gentle with me. He told her to feel sorry for me. That was the instruction manual he handed his wife. Feel sorry for Elaine. She's the poor relative. She's the one who didn't quite make it. Be kind but don't dig too deep because it'll just make her uncomfortable. And Elise, because she loved Daniel and trusted Daniel and had no reason to believe that a man would construct an elaborate fictional biography for his own sister, accepted all of it. For 3 years she treated me with a particular kind of warmth that I couldn't name but always felt slightly off. Gentle. Careful. The warmth you'd extend to someone fragile. Once she offered to pay for my dinner at a restaurant. Once she mentioned she had some old professional clothes she was donating and would I like to look through them first. Once at Christmas, she handed me an envelope and said, "Just a little something to help with things." And inside was $200 in cash. I took it. I thanked her. And I went home to my 4-bedroom house that I owned outright and sat in my home office looking at 2 monitors displaying the real-time performance dashboard of a company that had just closed its fiscal year at $26 million in revenue. And I held that $200 in my hand and felt something I'd never felt before. Not anger, not humiliation, bewilderment. The pure, disorienting bewilderment of realizing that someone has built a version of you that doesn't exist, and that other people are living inside that version, furnishing it, decorating it, believing it so completely that they bring you $200 in cash because they think you need it.